Amazing. So, Jennifer, thanks for speaking with me today.
No
First,
worries.
do you want to start by telling me a little bit more about yourself and how you got started in property?
Yeah, of course. So, my name is Jennifer Osazwa. Currently, I've been working in cybersecurity for around 4 years ago. Love tech, love the industry. But I feel like when it comes to planning or just future wise, you want to think of ways in which you can acquire multiple streams of income. And for me, one of the areas with that was actually property investing. So I'd say at the time or right now, I'm not exactly, new to the industry. So when I was younger, my dad had quite a few properties in London. So that just helped from an exposure standpoint, especially when it comes to buy to lets and HMOs. But it wasn't really until I'd say around 2022, 2021, that's when I just took it upon myself to you know, go into property, but starting off from a foundational standpoint, whether it be buying books or just buying courses and just seeing what I can take from there. So that's sort of how it kicked off for me. And it wasn't until I got in touch with Hailey and I HLE, sorry. And then I did then I
Yeah.
did a few courses, had a few calls with the team, and I got my investment property in Chester and it's actually been doing really good.
So, when was that? So, what year was that you started working with us?
It was last year.
Last year. Okay. And so, what was the for people listening? What was the process like from when you first kind of saw high living estates and reached out to? Obviously, you mentioned there you taking out your first property in Chester.
Yeah. So I'd say the process it was actually very smooth. So prior to me actually reaching out to HLE, I already knew about you guys, but this was like within the period in which I took a break from property investing because I bought a course from Simon Smith, done some research about him. It was great. Went on some viewings, and sometimes it just feels like it's a case of you get to see a very great property, you meet a great landlord, but then out of nowhere, they just increase the asking price of the rent, or they just don't get back in touch with you. So within that time period, I sort of took a break, saw HLE, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna come back to you guys when I'm ready. And then eventually just got to the point I was like, you know what, how badly do I want this? I feel like your level of commitment just depends on how badly you truly want something for yourself. And by that point, I was just fully committed, which is when I reached out to the team. I think it must have been sometime after August, September. In that process, honestly, it was just so smooth. Did my background research. I saw many testimonials. I saw that, the team had won Investment Agency of the Year. So from that standpoint, it just helps to build, credibility, sorry, and also trust in a company.
Mm.
So I believe I had a call with Esther, spoke about different areas of interest. And at the start, it was actually Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester. I know, so cliche. But then after a while, I got Chester.
Mm.
And I feel like moving in, or just like when you get into more details about the deal, a lot of investors, I'll just speak for myself, you'll just think, okay, cool. Like when I get this property, I just want it to be contracted long-term bookings. But I really do want to highlight the importance of duality. So even though you do think that, okay, cool, I want contractors to stay or I want long-term bookings, it's also important to take into account short-term bookings are good too, because regardless, you want to work on filling out the calendar to pay your rent, to pay the bills.
More reviews
So
as
in
well,
terms,
right?
pardon?
More reviews as well, right?
More reviews, exactly. So that was important to me to just like instill that mindset because beforehand it just wasn't really that way. So spoke to Esther, saw the property in person and also a video viewing. And it wasn't until maybe a week or so after I signed the deal and it was smooth sailing from there.
Amazing. I think going back to what you mentioned at the start there, I've done a couple of these kind of interviews now, and the
Yeah,
common theme between all of you is you actually just decided you got to a point where you were like, I'm just going to do it. Like, I'm
yeah,
just going to take
exactly.
that step, which I think is a lot of investors kind of sit on the fence, arguably
Mm,
too long, and they kind of miss opportunities because naturally it's a big step, right? And I think one thing that we really do try and build is that trust. And I think through doing things like this, with investing
absolutely.
itself, it's just building that trust with people and giving them that knowledge and understanding that we're on board, and as I'm sure we're going to come on to with you, not just sort of from when you speak with us about potentially taking out an investment, but also that after process of how's it going, like how can we improve things, potentially scaling up as well. Talk to
Yeah.
me a little bit about once the unit went live, how was it performing, like, and where are we now?
Yeah. So the property, it was live for, I want to say 21 days. And out of that in December, we were able to fill in 17 nights. So from that aspect, I wasn't disappointed because prior to taking it on, I kind of told myself like, even though you want to believe that you'll have profits from day one, it's just not the case.
Yeah.
So you really do need to give yourself a reality check. And for that, because I was like, cool, like let me just manage my expectations, it didn't really come as a blow. So the first month, which was December, didn't really see any profits. Even though I wanted to, I was okay with it because I kind of like put myself in a position to understand that this
Mm.
is what happens. As of January, I did start to see profit, but I'd say as of February onwards, it was just amazing. So I can say between February up until now, the profit's been around, I want to say 740 to around 1K. And recently I work with Jordan, Rose Platinum Properties. Honestly, he's amazing. So he has just accepted another booking for June with the possibility to extend into July. So in
Brilliant.
that sense, that also helps from a profit standpoint because I think that would be around 1K a month. So
Mm.
profit wise, sorry. So in that aspect, I'm very happy. It's not really, I wasn't really expecting it because you just go from not receiving any profits to like receiving a bit to receiving something that's actually quite big.
And
But
how does that compare to obviously when we sent the unit over? I know we sent our numbers at 70%. What kind of occupancy are you seeing now in that unit?
I'd say at the moment we've had back-to-back contractors, so in terms of having long-term bookings, it's just been great. So
Mm.
I wouldn't say maybe between February, if not January up until now, it's been between I want to say 97 to 100% occupancy.
Amazing. That's exactly what we want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been cool. It's been a really nice journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, from our side, like, I think it's a really good point you made there about how at the start it's never going to happen instantly because naturally you have to get those reviews. It has to snowball. And from your side as well, you're building credibility with people potentially staying.
Yeah,
And I don't know about you, but me firsthand, I always look at the reviews before I stay anywhere. So I think
exactly.
understanding for a lot of investors that first month that it might not necessarily end up with loads of profit, but it's just about
Yeah,
building that reputation and
yeah.
having the contract where you can kind of keep scaling it up. Is your plan now moving forward? What are your plans in property and what would you like to do?
So in terms of let's just say property as a whole, I sort of have like a roadmap that I want to follow.
Brilliant.
So I started off with rent to SA because the barrier to entry it's relatively low. You don't really need to worry about certain things the way you would do if you were to buy a property in itself, whether it be mortgages, so on and so forth. So the plan is to scale with rent service accommodation and then use the profit or yeah, the profit from that to then buy an investment property or just start off with buy to lets and
Mm,
potentially transition into HMOs. And from that point there, once that has brought in enough capital as well, see how best I can get into property development. So I'm just sort of like using this as like a foundation or like a stepping stone to
mm.
reach the final end goal for myself, which would be property development.
I think that aligns perfectly with kind of the property cycle that we would always put forward to clients as well, because I think
Yeah,
rent to service accommodation is a perfect entry level investment point because compared to other strategies, you don't need masses of finance.
exactly. Yeah,
Like so you can then use that profit, especially if your occupancy is as high as 97%, you must be well on track to kind of get your money back before we even anticipated, right?
yeah.
So I mean that's honestly amazing. Is there anything that before you were investing, what was your biggest concern and how has that played out since starting investing?
I'd say my biggest concern when it comes to this investment strategy as a whole, it's always can the property actually fill up the calendar? I
Mm,
feel like starting out, or just like the first couple of weeks or first 2 months or so, you just feel a sense of anxiety in the sense of, okay, cool, like it's gone live, it's relatively new. Because it's new, will this get enough views? Or because there's not enough reviews there? I'm the same as yourself. I like to look at reviews before I stay somewhere. So
mm,
because there's not really anything there. Would people be more inclined to stay here as opposed to somewhere else? But I think once we had like the first two, three bookings, I was fine with that. And because at the moment we've been getting a lot of contractor bookings, I just feel like a sense of, I feel peace of mind. I don't really have that feeling of I need to worry, will this property be filled? Will it not be filled? It's just not there anymore. So I guess that was my biggest concern when it comes to that, especially seeing as Chester, it wasn't, you know, part of my initial or just within my catchment area. So because I've seen, the type of guests that it attracts, I see how popular it is with contractors, even short-term stays as well. I know that the possibility of us having repeat business or just return business is relatively high. Plus, when you look into seasonality, especially in the summer, I know that after speaking to quite a few people, Chester's actually quite good. So moving forward, I wouldn't necessarily say I have any sense of anxiety or just fear with regards to can this fill in any bookings, because it does. So now it's just a sense of now that I know this, how could I apply this knowledge to the next deal that I take on, or if I decide to eventually, transition into a buy to let, complete different strategy, but you will have some type of concern. So I'd say that was the main one for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think exactly what you're saying there. To combat those kind of concerns and queries beforehand, it's all about that knowledge, right? And
Yeah,
you mentioned Chester. Chester's an interesting one because it's not your stereotypical rent service accommodation. I know a lot of people tout around. I think you mentioned it, Manchester, Liverpool, those kind of areas. But understanding the strategy and sort of taking a deeper dive into it, having the contractor market as well as your tourists, and then maybe your
yeah,
international students is so important to kind of diversify your actual occupancy as well
absolutely.
up to what I mean, the level that you're at is kind of aspiring to where everyone wants to be,
Yeah.
right? So I'm sure you guys have contractors and then you have maybe students and then you have tourists as well. And finding markets that can tap into all three of those areas,
Mhm.
you're onto a winner, really. I mean
Exactly.
that's amazing. What's we always round off with one piece of advice that you would give to an investor watching this. There could be someone potentially not investing yet on the fence or someone that's already started. What's one piece of advice that you'd give them?
That is a good question. I feel like it could be to focus to focus on what is your long-term goals, especially when it comes to property investing. Sort of figure out, do you have a network of people, just resources that you can have access to or just reach out to in terms of giving you advice with regards to this is what you should do based on the amount of finance that you currently have at the moment. This is the property investment strategy that you can focus on, or I've worked with X agency, I recommend that you get in touch with them too. So being very intentional about what your goal is in terms of property investing, but also being proactive in a sense of not really being passive with regards to what you want, but taking the opportunity to read about it, whether it be buying a book, whether it be, taking a different course, or it be reaching out to yourselves, in which I would highly recommend. So again, focus on the long-term strategy, but also be very proactive in regards to what you want, be very practical, and just have that sense of reflection in terms of how badly do you want it? I feel like once you've actually had some time to think about it, if you know deep down that this is something you want to do, you'd go for it, because the more it lingers, the less likely you are to actually pursue it. You'll just push it to the side because in your mind it's like, okay, cool, like it's not that important. So just be very intentional about what you want and be able to identify the different resources that you can actually leverage to reach that certain point, because sometimes you feel as if you have to do it alone, and that's not the case. There's so many people out there, whether it be people that you know personally, your team, anyone that can actually help you and put you in the right direction. So I know you said one, it's kind of two, but that's one thing
No,
that
I
I
mean,
would
that's a
say to
brilliant
future investors.
answer, and I think it's like anything in life, right? If you want something, you've got to go and get it. You can't just kind of sit.
Exactly. Yeah,
But no, really appreciate that, Jennifer. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed that. I hope everyone watching has as well. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming
no
on.
problem, Jack. Thank you so much for your time as well.
Thank you.